Hey guys, Jester here. Today I'm going to be going over Dragon Magazines 290 and 291. Alright, there we go. Can't get used to this backwards thing. Anyway, both of these back-to-back editions have a part 1, part 2 of the Death Knights of Demogorgon. So before I get into those magazines, in case you don't know who or what Demogorgon is the Prince of Demons, and one of his figures that you can get looks like this. I painted it myself. Now there is a description in the first edition Monster Manual that describes him as having bluish green skin. I actually did a Google search the other day on images of Demogorgon, and there, of over hundreds of images, I saw one that actually portrayed the blue-green skin like the original Monster Manual described him as having. There were several instances where he had a greenish, almost like a muddy greenish coloration, but and I think that was probably the most numerous depiction of him. But in any case, I chose to paint the way that I did there because I like that. Anyway, but that's near here, never here near. It's not here nor there. And then I got one more figure to show you. As far as Death Knights go, and I'll get into that in a second. I have in my own campaigns had one of my characters transform into a Death Knight, or I should say one of my players' characters transform into a Death Knight, and this is the Death Knight that he became right here. And shield there, and then on the back side you got his symbol of Hextor. Alright, so enough of the miniatures. So, alright, so in the first edition Fiend Folio, that is where the Death Knight first appeared, to my knowledge. And we go there. That is the image that they give of him. And what it says here is the Death Knight. And there are only 12 of these dreadful creatures known to exist. Is a horrifying form of lich created by a demon prince, it is thought Demogorgon, from a fallen human paladin. The Death Knight itself cannot be turned or dispelled, though it is affected by holy word, but it has power over undead equivalent to that of a 6th level cleric. It has 75% magic resistance, and if 11 or lower is rolled on a percentage dice, a magic spell will be reflected back at the caster. The Death Knight wears this is where I don't like. This is the Death Knight wears light armor. I'm sorry, if he's a knight, he should be wearing heavy armor. But anyway, especially if he's a fallen paladin, he should be wearing heavy armor. But in any case, this is first edition's description. The Death Knight wears light armor, 9 inch or 12-inch movement depending on its other encumbrances, if any, but it is always treated as armor class 0. It has, maybe they're referring to it's going to be magical armor, and therefore that's why it's light. I can deal with that. It has 18 double-aught strength and usually attacks with a sword, 80% chance of this being a magical sword. It will usually be riding a nightmare, one of which can be summoned to serve a Death Knight every 10 years. The beast will serve a Death Knight as a paladin's horse serves a paladin. The fearsome powers of the Death Knight derive largely from its use of magic. It continually generates fear in a 5-foot radius, can create a wall of ice at will, and has innate powers of detect magic and detect invisibility. Twice a day it can dispel magic and gate in a demon. Twice a day it can dispel magic and gate in a demon type 1, 20%, type 2, 25%, type 3, 30%, type 4, 20%, or type 6, 5%. No chance of a type 5 apparently, with a 75% chance of the gate opening. So basically you would roll 75%, roll percentile. If you get a 75% or less, he's succeeded in gating in a demon. If you add up those other percentages, they equal exactly 100. So just roll percentile dice, and wherever it falls, I would say type 1 is 20%. So from 0 to 20 is type 1. From 21 to 45 would be a type 2. From 45 to 75 would be a type 3. From 75 to 95 would be a type 4, and 96 to 100 would be the type 6. My math might have been off by 1 there, but you get the idea. Anyway, once per day, a Death Knight can use any one of the power word spells, either and a symbol of pain or fear, and generate a 20 hit dice fireball. Where appropriate, a Death Knight's magic use is at the 20th experience level. A Death Knight will speak 3 to 6 languages in addition to its alignment tongue and the common tongue. Alright, so that was first edition's rendition. Now we go to second edition Monster Manual. And that's their depiction of him. Alright. It's changed up just slightly here. A Death Knight is the horrifying corruption of a paladin or lawful good warrior cursed by the gods. Here it does not give credit to Demogorgon. Didn't necessarily in Fiend Folio say that it was Demogorgon. It said most likely Demogorgon. Here it's just basically any god can curse it. Can curse the paladin and create the Death Knight. So a Death Knight is the horrifying corruption of a paladin or lawful good warrior cursed by the gods to its terrible form as punishment for betraying the code of honor it held in life. A Death Knight resembles a hulking knight, typically taller than 6 feet and weighing more than 300 pounds. Its face is a blackened skull covered with shards of shriveled, rotting flesh. It has 2 tiny, glowing orange-red pinpoints for eyes. Its armor is scorched black as if it had been in a fire. The demeanor of a Death Knight is so terrifying that even Kinder have been known to become frightened. Kinder basically meaning other undead. A Death Knight's deep, chilling voice seems to echo from the depths of a bottomless cavern. A Death Knight converses in the language it spoke in its former life, as well as up to 6 additional languages. Death Knight retains the fighting skills it had in its former life, since it had little regard for its own safety and an intense hatred of most living creatures. It is an extremely dangerous opponent. Still, a Death Knight retains a semblance of the pride it held as a good warrior and fights honorably. It never ambushes opponents from behind, nor does it attack before an opponent has an opportunity to ready his weapon. So I guess, oh my gosh, what was his name? Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride, if he ever got turned into a Death Knight, that would be, he always waited for Wesley to ready himself. But in any case, I continue. Surrender is unknown to a Death Knight, and it will parley only if it senses its opponent has crucial information, such as the fate of a former family member. A Death Knight has a strength of 18 double aught. It usually attacks with a sword 80% of the time. This is a magical sword. When a magical sword is indicated, roll 1d6 and consult the table below. A Death Knight wears the same armor it wore in its previous life, but regardless of the quality of the armor, it always has an AC of 0. Hit points for a Death Knight are determined by rolling 10-sided dice. A Death Knight's magical abilities make it especially dangerous. It constantly generates fear in a 5-foot radius, and it can cast detect magic, detect invisibility, and wall of ice at will. Twice per day, it can cast a spell magic. Once per day, it can use either power word blind, power word kill, or power word stun. It can also cast symbol of fear or symbol of pain once per day, as well as a 20 hit dice fireball once per day. All of its magical spells function at the 20th level of ability. A Death Knight cannot be turned, but it can be dispelled by Holy Word spell. It has the power over undead of a 6th level evil priest. Its magic resistance is 75%, and if an 11 or lower is rolled on the percentile die, the spell is reflected back at the caster. Right. Death Knights are former good warriors who were judged by the gods to be guilty of unforgivable crimes such as murder or treason. For instance, Kryn's Lord Soth, the most famous of all Death Knights, murdered his wife so that he could continue an affair with an elf maid. I didn't read the Kryn novels, so don't know what that's from. But apparently, from first edition to second edition, it wasn't just a, it wasn't just a Greyhawk thing. It became more spread out in the products that TSR came out with. So anyway, Death Knights are cursed to remain in their former domains, usually castles or other strongholds. Don't like that part. I think they should be free roaming, which we'll get to when I get into the magazines. They are further condemned to remember their crime in song or on any night when the moon is full. Few sounds are as terrifying as a Death Knight's chilling melody echoing through the moonlight countryside. Death Knights are likely to attack any creature that interrupts their songs or trespasses in their domains. All right. So that is second editions. All right. Now we get to, now I don't know if it's third or 3.5. I think it's 3.5. It's when the Living Greyhawk campaign was going. So I'm pretty sure it was 3.5. But I could be wrong. But in any case, so this is Dragon Magazine 290. It's got other cool features and articles in it, but I'm only focusing on the Death Knight today. All right, now this is a little bit of a lengthy read. I'm not going to do the same thing in the other one, but so don't think that, oh my God, he's got another one to read after this. No, that's not the case. But anyway, but I do feel that reading this whole article here is worthy of talking about the Death Knight. Now, like I said, according to Fiend Folio, Demogorgon created 12 Death Knights. Didn't say how, didn't say why, didn't say who, but there were 12. In these two magazines, they've changed the number slightly, but, and we'll get to it in a second, and this is one thing I don't like about editing, is they didn't even agree on the number between the two parts of the same article in the two different mags. So anyway, here we go. The Death Knights of Earth, Earth being World of Greyhawk. Part 1 by Gary Holian. Death Knight template by Rich Redman. Illustrations by Greg Staples and Jeff Maricola. With tongues afire and breath of smoke, the wrath of heaven their vengeance did stoke. And this is from the Ballads of Gwendolyn of the Cranes. I think I pronounced that right because the writing is kind of squiggly and squirrely and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, here we go to the actual print. Countless evils have stalked the world of Greyhawk, but few are as dire as the dreaded Death Knights. Formed in a crucible of betrayal and damnation, these fell beings roam the lands of men, cursing everything they touch. Walking warriors of bone and desiccated flesh, enlivened by the fiery spirit and unyielding hatred, Death Knights represent some of the most powerful and destructive champions that the armies of evil have ever marshaled against the forces of good and light in the Flannis. Fortunately, their numbers are few and their enemies are many. This article recounts the fell history of those who would become the Death Knights and presents a new template you can use to generate Death Knights for your own campaign. Next issue, we'll take a look at specific Death Knights and how they can be used as villains to enliven and perhaps destroy your campaign. So before we go any further, the template that they put out here, it just gives you stats for a Death Knight. It's no different than the stats I read in the other two, except for its 3.5 edition stats as opposed to first and second edition stats, which has all the embellishments of 3.5. So in any case, and like I said, these articles have them being able to move about. They're not stationary in their own domains, and that I do like that about these articles. Origin of the Death Knights. And let's see if I can read this, because this is one of those squiggly things again. The sleeping crown rouses to an apostate. Eyes succumb to the beauty of the beast. And 13 moons circle the dreaded master as the sun sets on the great empire. Quatrain the lays, something like that, of Bar Starrick, whatever. Here we go. Centuries ago, the great kingdom of Arity enjoyed a level of peace and prosperity previously unknown to the Flannis. From the Solnor shores to the Falls Gap, across the entire breadth of their empire, Arity culture and commerce ruled the day. In 198 CY, the sage Selvor the Younger proclaimed a coming time of strife and living death, but few in power wanted to hear such words during an unprecedented period of contentment. A creeping decadence was everywhere in evidence to those willing to peel back the veil and recognize it. How it kind of resembles today, don't you think? However, few could have guessed that the seeds of centuries of darkness and destruction were even that being planted at the kingdom's core by those most entrusted to safeguard it. The Knight Protectors of the Great Kingdom is widely regarded as the greatest order of knighthood in the history of the Flannis. While their current incarnation is but a shadow of its former self, the Knights were first christened by the kings of Arity centuries before the kingdom achieved its swell. Over the years, the Knight Protectors became the most preeminent defenders of the common weal in all Arity. Regardless of god or creed, all knights proudly shared this burden. As a congregation of the kingdom's best and bravest warriors, the Knight Protectors and their exploits became the stuff of fable and legend. The defeat of barbarian hordes, rampaging dragons, and the schemes of power-mad sorcerers became woven into their history along with the legends of heroes such as Sir Lazimon the Martyr, Prince Jopon of Alyssa, Caldney Ver of the Shamblefield, and Sir Picarn the Hammer. By the autumn of 202 CY, during CY is the common year, during the reign of the Overking Jiranan, a vacancy emerged at the head of the illustrious knighthood following the death of the well-respected knight commander of the order, Lord Nidraman the Hextorian. Now, a little history here. Great Kingdom had two orders of knighthoods, of knights of the Knight Protectors. You had the order governed by Heronius, which is a lawful good god, and Hextor, Heronius's brother, a lawful evil god. So you had lawful good and lawful evil knights in the same order of knights. Very odd. Very odd. But in any case, they worked on the same side. So just let that soak in for a little while. So anyway, Lord Nidraman the Hextorian. Most Erdi expected the Council Gallant, composed of the oldest and wisest knights in the kingdom, to choose the man widely regarded as the greatest knight of the day to succeed the office. This was Lord Kargoth of Mansbridge, a Torquan nobleman who cut a stunning figure in the imaginations of the Erdi people and nobility. A paladin of Heronius, accounts say he stood nearly 7 feet tall and had the strength of a hill giant. His exploits were already countless, and while no longer in his prime, none could deny his unmatched I never know how to pronounce this. Puissance? But time eventually claims all men, even the matchless Lord Kargoth, so the paladin viewed becoming the standard bearer of the Knight Protectors as a last opportunity to extend his glorious career and share in the power regularly entrusted to lesser worthies. Already you can see the pride before the fall. An eclectic faction had gathered around his banner, a band of fawning princelings, cronies, schemers, and other assorted ne'er-do-wells. They fully expected his elevation to the head of the order and began whispering to him that it was all but assured. When the Council Gallant announced Benedor Monlath of Chathold as the next knight commander of the order, shock spread throughout the land. The council proclaimed young Benedor the best living embodiment of the tenets of the Knight Protectors. Some even suggested that he was touched by the spirit of the goddess Joide. When word of the decision reached Lord Kargoth at his castle, Farlanst, the mighty knight seethed. His proponents had assured him of the selection, and he had become convinced that no one was more worthy. The apparent slight wounded him deeply. When a priest of Heronius counseled against challenging the council's decision, Kargoth had him expelled from his castle. This brings back a little bit of memory, kind of similarity to Game of Thrones at the Wall, when Jon became the commander over, and I don't know remember the other dude's name. But you know what happened after that. So, in any case, here we go. Goaded by his supporters, Kargoth appeared in the capital the following month for the convocation of investor held in the Court of Essences at the Royal Palace. There, before the Overking and assembled nobles of the celestial houses of the land, he challenged Sir Benedor to a contest of arms. The younger knight accepted the challenge as honor required, despite the disquiet quickly spreading throughout the chamber. Though clearly weaker than Kargoth, the valiant young knight repeatedly parried his attacks successfully, refusing to give up the floor. The two battled to a stalemate until sunset fell upon the chamber, marking the end of the contest. Kargoth's humiliation was complete. According to the rules of Parsland, the code of the Knight Protectors, Lord Kargoth had been defeated as he had issued the challenge but failed to prevail in the allotted time. Sir Benedor reached out a hand of truce and friendship, as was the custom of the order, but Sir Kargoth could not hide his disgust not in that special chamber created by the sorcery of the legendary court mage Shandor. And there's a picture of Kargoth there. After he became the Death Knight. Of the legendary court mage Shandor, which bade men to speak the truth in all things. Knights of all stripes called foul, while Kargoth's faction sneered. In his agony and shame, the great knight rode off, wandering the countryside for many days. He damned the fate that had brought him low, and vowed somehow to exact a vengeance. His mood festered, and he openly cursed Heronius for his plight. Second mistake, don't ever curse the gods you worship. That applies in real life. Although there is only one God. The heavens looked down upon him in silence. Demoralized, Kargoth soon became lost in a rainstorm while riding up the coast back to Farlanst. Within a day of his home, he stumbled upon a lost ruin in which he took refuge. Great DM hook to get the players in where he wants them to. Create a storm right next to the cavern system that you want them to go. There the paladin discovered a rubble-strewn stairway leading down into the darkness. Following it, he came upon a vast hypogeum located beneath the earth. An ancient shrine greeted the light of his torch in this crypt-like chamber, at the center of which stood a grotesque statue of a singularly obscene beauty. Kargoth was transfixed. A chattering began to buzz in his ears as a voice spoke to him from out of the den. It seemed to emanate from the monstrous icon, which the paladin immediately recognized as that of a prince of the abyss. The ancient Erdi called this demon Amon Ebor, the sibilant beast, a fiend known more commonly as Demogorgon in modern vernacular. Kargoth knew his cult was widespread among the decadent Flan natives of the northeastern coast who practiced dark rites and human sacrifice, and had been prevalent in the central lands before the native Flan there had been pacified generations ago. Now, real quick, like I said, the ancient Erdi called him Amon Ebor, which is the sibilant beast, and he's known in more modern times as Demogorgon. I'm going to get into this in the video next time about true names, but neither one of these is his true name. I'll leave it at that right now. Come back next week to find out all about true names. The beast praised Kargoth's might and heralded his exploits. Before morning, it had completely seduced him, making promises of power and vengeance, filling the gaping hole in his wounded pride. There we go with that pride. The beast bade Kargoth to prove his fealty in exchange for the awesome powers that would be his to command. Kargoth and Demogorgon swore a pact that must be sealed in blood. The fiend's request surprised the paladin, but the twisted nature of the plan brought a smile to his face. Kargoth marked his words carefully, pledging himself completely to the dire path that lay before him. And then, with the suddenness of a thunderstroke, tentacles emerged from the darkness and tore out his eyes. In a single moment, dominated by what seemed like a year of pain and torture, Lord Kargoth became the first, most powerful Death Knight of Earth. The following morning, Kargoth returned to Farlanst, donning a helmet to mask his disfigurement and new form. His assembled servitors and allies, though somewhat taken aback at his menacing demeanor, were eager to speak with him. An internecine skirmish had broken out between some of the Knight Protectors over the ascendants of Venedor, whom some considered weak and unworthy. Other long-time grudges, having little to do with Kargoth, came to the fore, and many knights overtly ignored the tenets of Parslin in their haste to gain revenge for past slights. Some spoke openly against the Overking. Turmoil had begun to spread throughout the kingdom, and some of the grumbling knights begged Kargoth to lead a coup of the order with their support. Much to their surprise, the behelmed Lord Knight agreed to do so. The plan he proceeded to lay out perplexed them, but the eager renegades listened on. Instead of riding out to confront their rivals at Morshalden Castle, ancestral headquarters of the Knight Protectors, Lord Kargoth's plan called for a raid on the obscure temple of Lothan near Reldevan. Kargoth informed his conspirators that the temple was the secret hiding place of the legendary Orb of Saul, a holy artifact of great symbolic importance to the Arity people. Its theft, he argued, would force their opponents into the open, where they could be crushed on the field of battle thanks to the orb's legendary powers. Kargoth ultimately convinced 13. Now here we go. So you got Kargoth, and then you've got 13, according to this article here. That makes 14 Death Knights. Fiend Folio, 12. But again, it's going to change when we get to the next one. So you got Kargoth and his 13 followers. Or not followers, but fellow knights. Alright, so anyway. 13 of his fellow knights to place their trust in him and take up his plan. Though few of them truly understood its dire intentions, they agreed to support him and rode for Reldevan the following dawn. The hell-bent troop made quick work of the guardians of the temple and easily pierced its inner sanctum, the secret resting place of the orb. Kargoth worked according to his own plan, however, and he bade everyone to stand aside as he approached the orb himself and studied its rune-covered surface. The other knights displayed open apprehension. The culmination of the pact Kargoth had made with his new dark master was at hand. The other traitors were no longer of any concern to him. The beast had taught him ancient words of power, maledictions so profane they could bend the rumored powers of the orb to his will and cause it to open a crack between this world and Demogorgon's personal lair of the abyss. Without further warning, Kargoth traced the surface of the orb with his fingers and spoke the words of power. Smoke rose from his digits as a crackling nimbus sent the Dark Knight hurtling to the walls of the chamber. An earthquake rocked the temple of Lothan, and the floors and walls began to crack. Great tongues of unearthly fire began to shoot out from the orb in all directions. The other knights began to run for their lives, but they were quickly and unmercifully struck down where they stood by the relentless flames. Their flesh caught fire as they collapsed onto buckling flagstones. Lord Kargoth writhed on the floor in agony, but he had succeeded in his task. He had delivered up the traitors to his master, and he had unleashed a horror upon the world, a great demon beast named Arendagrost, Maw of the Abyss. According to accounts at the time, the beast vaguely resembled an immense wingless dragon of gargantuan size. Instead of legs, it moved upon a sea of tentacles. In place of scales, it was covered in coarse black fur and had 3 heads that resembled monstrous horned fiends that breathed bloody acid, fire, and frost. Its 6-fold eyes offered instant death to anyone catching their hideous gaze. The monstrous fiend began to cut a swath of destruction from the outskirts of Reldevan on a direct path to Roxas. As reports reached the other Knight Protectors, they mobilized in the defense of the kingdom. Sir Benedor, new commander of the Order, had been en route back to Chathold, but quickly rode for Reldevan upon hearing the terrible news. He arrived to discover the Temple of Lothan a smoking ruin. What he found in the chamber of the orb shocked him to the core of his being. The smoking bodies of 13 Knight Protectors were strewn about the inner sanctum, which now resembled a carnal house. Their eyes had been cut from their faces, and Kargoth was nowhere to be found. Sir Benedor immediately suspected dark sorcery and moved quickly to examine the orb in the center of the room. The young knight barely glanced at its rune-covered surface before the chamber began to stir. A sudden coldness tore his skin. One by one, the smoking, scorched bodies of the dead knights around him began to rise to their feet and fix their gaze upon him. Their armor and clothing were seared to their charred flesh. A preternatural glow emerged from their faces where once had been eyes. Sir Benedor recognized instantly that these were no longer men but fiends. These were the dreaded Death Knights, newly sired into the world. Now, I will say I like the bluish glow in their eyes as opposed to the little pinpoints, because the little pinpoints resemble other undead creatures, and I like the newness of that. But in any case, aftermath. The rest of the history is well known, as the remaining Knight Protectors united to first waylay, then destroy the demonic abomination heading for Roxas. However, this victory came too late to save some of the royal family, which was decimated near Carnifand. The attack cost many additional lives along the path of destruction, and a wave of terror gripped the kingdom as word quickly spread throughout the land of Kargoth's betrayal. As his infamy spread throughout the kingdom, the other Death Knights escaped the ruins of the Temple of Lothan and scattered throughout the lands under the cover of this confusion. They cursed the gods and Lord Kargoth for drawing them into the same dark pact he made with the beast. The cult of Amon Ebor began to rise in the eastern cities, gaining a foothold in the great kingdom once more. Sir Benedor, now the bearer of the Orb of Soul, launched his quest to bring the traitors to justice and dedicated the order to this mission. But there would be few victories in his dauntless struggle, as passions soon faded and decadence gained a handhold among the Erdi. In 213 CY, which is only 11 years later, the royal astrologers of Rel Astra confirmed a coming age of great sorrow. The new Overking Zelkor distanced himself from the Knight Protectors. The attention of the great kingdom was drawn progressively inward as provinces began to win their independence, decade after decade. A century later, the Death Knights were so powerful it was they who began hunting down the Knight Protectors. Few came to their aid, as the monstrous knights gained the upper hand. Kargoth's depredations were so great that his infamy spread far and wide. The great kingdom, once a beacon of order and justice in the Flannis, was never again the same. Now, I will say that immediately after they were transformed, they still held some semblance of their former selves, for they still wanted to protect the land. They still wanted to carry out their duties sworn to protect the land, and they went after that beast and destroyed it. So it was only after they realized what they were, and after years and years and years of undeath, that their souls were slowly transformed, because unlike Kargoth, who made a pact with Demogorgon, they did not. They basically were cursed. So that's the difference between Kargoth and the others. Then it goes on to give you the template, which I'm not going to read, and a thing about Death Knight characters, which again I'm not going to read. It's just, I mean, it's only this much, but again, that ends the article here. Now, in this one, it basically names the other knights and gives descriptions about them. I'm not going to read any of the descriptions. I will read to you the names, just so you'll know what they're called. In this one, because remember, you had Kargoth and 13 knights. Here, you've got, I believe, a total of 12. So let me make sure I got this right. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, so you got 13 total. So you got Kargoth and 12 knights. So from Fiend Folio, you had 12 total. In the first article, part 1, you had Kargoth and 13, which would be 14, two more than Fiend Folio. And this one you got Kargoth and 12, one less than part 1, one more than Fiend Folio. So anyway, it's like 2 articles, got to get it right, guys. Come on. But anyway, so he names the 12. So this is Demogorgon's Champions, The Death Knights of Earth, Part 2, by Gary Holian, illustrated by Adam Rex. Okay, so you've got the original Sir Kargoth the Betrayer, and this is actually calls him Saint Kargoth the Betrayer. Then you've got sorry. Go back to this real quick. That is supposedly the Bibliosphere, which used to be the Orb of Saul. All right. So I will read real quick about the Bibliosphere Sphere. This twisted iron rod is topped by the Bibliosphere, an obscene parody of the Orb of Saul, the goodly artifact that played an important role in the formation of Kargoth's Death Knights and has vexed them ever since. Demogorgon's Bibliosphere bestows 1 negative level on any good creature attempting to wield it. The negative level remains as long as the rod is in hand and disappears when the rod is no longer wielded. The negative level never results in actual level loss, but it cannot be overcome in any way. While the rod is wielded, its other magical powers are as follows. I'm not going to read all that. So now, at the end of the article there, it has Sir Benedor, who is a paladin of Aronius, lawful good, taking the Orb of Saul out of the temple. Here you've got the Bibliosphere, which it doesn't say that it's the same thing. It almost infers that it's different. Supposedly, and according to the article, when he touched it and spoke the words of power, it transformed. If it transformed, then it became, then the Orb of Saul is no longer, and the Orb of Saul is now the Bibliosphere. However, Benedor carried it out of the temple. Now, maybe he lost a level while he was carrying it out. Who knows? Again, that could have been better explained. But in any case, on with the rest. So you got the Sir Kargoth the Betrayer and his 12 accomplices. Well, not really accomplices. His 12 fellow Death Knights are as follows. You have Lord Monduiz, D-U-I-Z, Dafar, which is supposedly looks like that. You've got Lady Lorena Cath of Nalix, which supposedly looks like that. You've got Prince Myril of Rax. Really like this guy. He's wicked looking. He's got a crown and a trident, which is both are really badass. And so those are the only ones that they felt a need to give pictures to. Then you've got Sir Myril of Nalix, Lord Andromances of Garetheth, Sir Oslin Naran, Sir Rezinar of Hax, Lord Therian of Nalix. Those they actually gave descriptions. No pictures, but descriptions. Then it says the remains. 4 additional Death Knights stalked the Flannis. Though their histories and whereabouts are little known, many assume that their avoidance of the public eye must mean they are dead, but all have been seen within the last century, and divinations engaged by the Eldritch Lords reveal that they still scheme from locations unknown. The mysterious four tend to work alone and have little contact with each other. They are as follows: Sir Manar Sirik of Darman, Duke Urquhar Grass of Torquan, Sir Lurin the Boar of Torquan, and Lord Kyvan of Rax. Now, Lord Kyvan appears in another Dragon or Dungeon magazine adventure, so he makes an appearance. Anyway, final thought here. Those attempting to apprehend or destroy a Death Knight are encouraged to contact a representative from the Knight Protectors of the Great Kingdom before setting out. I mean, that's straight up from a police, modern day police, real life police advertisement. It's like they give the thing of yes, so and so is armed and dangerous. If you see this person, don't try to apprehend him himself, but contact the local police department at blah 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 blah. Come on, gotta love that crap. But anyway, okay. So guys, there you have it. There is your 13 Death Knights of Earth. The original 13, and how they became the Death Knights. And the fact that it, where Fiend Folio only surmised that it was probably Demogorgon, here Gary Holian contends that it was Demogorgon and explains how. So, thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it as always. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell. Share to all of your friends, and make sure that you, or I would appreciate if you would, I don't have it here, I would appreciate if you would help support this channel. I don't have a Patreon account or a tip jar, but if you wish to support me, you can go to the About section in this channel, and there are links to the hardback, paperback, and ebook formats of my novel that I wrote called The Book of Prophecies. It's a fantasy fiction novel, and I do believe you will thoroughly enjoy it, as it has a lot to do with stuff like I review here on this channel. Also, you can get it on Amazon in all three formats as well, and the Kindle version is going for $2.58 right now. So jump on that while you can, and in any case, until next time, and as always,